Hi, I'm Blake from Bosch Motorsport Australia. We're down here at 909 Motorsports in Newcastle, New South Wales. There's a lot happening out there, some very cool projects, but we've kind of stepped away to meet Eric and his very, very cool Fiat Abarth 500. Eric, fantastic to meet you.
Hi Blake, how are you, mate?
Well, thank you. What have you got behind us here? Can you tell us a little bit about this wild creation?
Well, this is my Abarth 595. It started off way back when and came in for a chip tune and sort of taken it from there.
Yeah, spiraled a little bit.
Just a little bit, unofficially.
Looking into the engine bay, I can see a lot of stuff going on here. Beyond what's at the front, the turbo, rocket anti-lag system, that looks to be a custom carbon intake plenum. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's actually a dual plenum design. So again, it sort of harks back to F1 and rally. Audi used a similar thing back in Group B rally, and it was used on F1 cars in the 80s a few times. But the concept of it is that the air comes in on the first chamber, and you can see that it's constantly reducing, but it pushes the air into a slot between the two plenums. And the idea of it is that it ends up with a very, very even distribution across the runners. So from the factory, it had the very traditional throttle at one end of the plenum coming in, and you get good feeding on the first couple of cylinders, but poor old one up here was getting starved. And we ran a lot of CFD modelling to start with and sort of ran some iterations, and then did some flow testing as well. And in the end, it's extremely even across the cylinders, which again, with the Bosch ECU, we're able to then leverage that to bring the power levels up. So we can only tune to what's the weakest link. And so in this case, all the cylinders are even, so we can bring them all up.
Fantastic, and I'm also seeing a lot of Bosch bits in there. Can you tell us a little
everything
bit?
Bosch.
That's everything Bosch. Yeah? So what are we looking at?
You got Bosch coil packs, Bosch pressure sensors, Bosch injectors, Bosch Motorsport fuel pressure reg. Yeah, upgraded Bosch drive-by-wire throttle
body,
from the Motorsport range.
Yep.
So yeah, everything is about. It's working along the lines of what was there from the factory, but much larger, better, and more improved performance.
And I'm actually seeing a second throttle body on this car. What's that doing?
Yeah, so that's part of the anti-lag management system. So we're able to control what air is flowing into the system and out of the system and so forth. So we can sort of, again, gives us precision control. So that's all run through the MS6 ECU as well. So we can manage surge and other things as well.
Yeah, cool. And what's that off? Is that it's not a Bosch bit, is it?
It is a Bosch bit, but it's actually a OEM from the Fiat itself, actually, with the original throttle body.
Oh, that's the throttle body that was on the...
That's the original. We put a much larger one on, so...
Recycling.
You know, exactly, putting it to good use. Yeah. So we thought, oh, we need a throttle body about that size, and there it is.
Excellent. And so you got the Bosch injectors there. What are you running in terms of fuel pumps?
It's a Bosch Motorsport BR540. Again, do want to be mucking around sort of with a lack of supply. Ash was able to modify the factory carrier and integrate it into the in-tank MRA.
Yeah.
So all of the factory fuel levels and so forth all works, and it gives us much more overhead in terms of pressure as well. So as we start cranking the boost levels up, we know we've got a strong supply.
Yeah, that's great, and that's what you want, right? A really nice, consistent fuel supply without, I guess, the hassle and the noise and everything of an external fuel pump and surge tank and that sort of thing.
Absolutely, and when we sort of step up, because that pump is so capable, and at different points the engine might not need that load, again, using the MS6, we're able to PWM the pump and control its flow. So this is one of the things that Ash is very meticulous about, is controlling return flow and making sure everything's in order as well.
Awesome. Well, I think we should bring Ash in and have a bit of a chat to him and hear what he has to say about the tuning that's actually gone into getting this thing running. So Ashley from 909 Motorsport is here to explain a little bit about the tuning magic that's gone into getting this engine up and running. Now, rocket anti-lag system, that is not something you typically see. Well, I've never seen another one.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about just generally what goes into tuning an engine with such a crazy system on there?
I guess it's not only about the engine calibration, but also the rocket calibration, and they're two separate items that you've got to sort of get going together in the calibration. So yeah, for us, thermal management was key. So we've got to thermally manage the engine at high output. The car's only running 98 fuel at the moment, and we've got to thermally manage the rocket, which is very important because you can just melt that chamber down. It's a jet chamber and it's got a fireball out of it all the time. So it's very important to manage that appropriately.
Yeah, so I guess, when people are tuning a regular engine, you've obviously got kind of controlled combustion on and off throughout the pistons, but this thing is literally fired up the whole time.
Yeah, that's right. It is, and it's important to get a smooth transition. So under the boost threshold, the rocket anti-lag is effective, and we have basically a flat torque curve all the way from about 2,500 RPM to about 7,100. But it then hands over to the engine after the boost threshold, so we've got to do that seamlessly so that the driver can actually drive the car smoothly.
Yeah, right. And I can only imagine what's involved from a tuning perspective. Now, we've talked about the Bosch MS6 ECU unit that's in this car. But what about that has allowed you to kind of set up such a complex anti-lag system?
I think it's got fantastic knob control. We've got onboard lambda and onboard EGT controls, so we use all those, and just the ability to be able to make adjustments and define our own maps to work this thing, because there's no playbook for it. So we've had to actually go outside the box and create our own tables.
Yeah, right. And what kind of sensors and that are in there, additional to something that you might see in a regular turbocharged vehicle? We have 2 lambda sensors, we have 2 EGT sensors, pre and post the rocket chamber, so that we can monitor what's going on. We can then look to manage the heat through that. It's got pre-turbo pressure sensor, it's got pre-throttle pressure sensor and inlet manifold pressure sensor. It's pretty well fully loaded with stuff, so that we can monitor everything that's going on. Yeah, and have you maxed out the inputs on the MS6.4 yet? Must be getting close.
We've still got some to go. There's a little bit extra in the tank here. We've got some other plans for it, so we'll be adding some extra things on.
Yeah, beautiful. And there's actually a second throttle body that Eric pointed out to me before. Is that feeding, that's controlling your boost levels?
So what that does is it controls the air into the rocket chamber. So we have to adjust the air in and out of that chamber as we adjust the fuel. So it's important to have a very fine calibration of that, and that's part of what we need to control the drivability. So it's very important to be able to do that accurately too.
Okay. Wow. I think, let's go take a look at some dyno charts and see what difference this made once it was installed.
Excellent. Okay.
So we've heard from Eric about how amazing this Abarth is to drive now. Torque basically from idle. He said it's a bit of a traffic-like weapon. But we've got some dyno charts here to actually see the difference based on your calibration, your testing. What are we looking at here?
Okay, so the blue line and the red line is just pre and post rocket anti-lag. Everything else is the same on the car. And as you can see with the blue line, we really don't come alive until about 5,000 RPM. But with the rocket anti-lag, right from 2,500, we've got virtually a flat torque curve, no boost threshold. The car's incredible. Right from that mark, you can run it right down to sort of 2,500 RPM and stand on the throttle, and you've got instant torque. We could go higher power and torque levels, but we're observing the fact that we've got a standard bottom end in the engine and the factory transmission. So we know that if we push harder than that, we're going to have reliability problems, and we'll look to going higher in the future once we do an engine build.
So at around 3,000 RPM there, what kind of gap are we seeing between the torque and the power levels, Ash?
You've got 166 Newton meters here, which is well under the boost threshold for this turbo. And with the rocket engage, we're up at 413 Newton meters, so well over double.
413 Newton meters at 3,000 RPM. Yeah, that's wild. Yeah. How does that, feel on the racetrack?
It's actually incredible, and one of the tracks that we use for some testing is Luddenham, It's for anyone that knows it, it's incredibly tight and twisty, and some of the corners there, the car was great on the straights, but there's not much straight at Luddenham. When you come into the tighter corners, you would be caught underneath this 4,500, 5,000 RPM threshold. But with the rocket engaged, it's diabolical everywhere. It's, you know, and it's controllable, so it's very linear. The way that we've set it up with the ECU, so that the driver can actually control how much torque they want, right up to the limit of 413 Newton meters at that point.
Amazing. And what are we looking at, moving away from the rocket, I guess, but in terms of peak power figures for this engine and torque?
So this is wheel kilowatt. It ran 220 kilowatts at the wheels peak at about 7,100 RPM previously, and 211 with the rocket. I mean, it's virtually the same in the top end, but they were just the two runs that we did.
Yeah.
And you can see here the boost threshold. So as the engine RPM increases, and we hand over to the engine after the rocket tapers off.
Very cool. Well, thanks for taking us through that, Ash. It's really exciting, and I can't wait to see what figures you're pulling up with the engine build and pushing things a little bit further. It's going to be wild.
Yeah, it's great. We're looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ash.
All right. Thanks, Blake.
Eric, can you tell us a little bit about this Abarth 500 behind you? You said it came in for a chip tune. Obviously, things have gone in a slightly different direction here with Ashley at 909 Motorsport. But what is the idea behind this build? Why did you say, hey, an Abarth 500, let's turn it into an absolute weapon?
Well, I've always liked a hot hatch, and a Fiat 500 is probably not the first car that people think of when they think hot hatch. And there is like this element of wolf in lamb's clothing, not even sheep's clothing. So I think it was a big inspiration to sort of say, well, how far can we push the platform? What can we do? And we sort of took a no holds barred, no limits attitude, and we just sort of keep pushing it along. And each time we've found the limits of the chassis, and as you can imagine, going from stock power around 120 kilowatts up to 220, you soon work out what works and what doesn't in terms of chassis setup. So we've actually got the suspensions out of the works Abarth, the Assetto Corsa car. So a few years ago, Abarth campaigned in the Bathurst 12 hour. So it's actually a suspension set up out of one of those cars. So that's helped, true up the suspension and control. The tyres, you can see that we've definitely gone through some major upgrades in terms of tyres. Again, when we sort of start pushing the envelope in terms of performance, then brakes become an issue, and brakes is something that definitely Bosch Motorsport and Ash in particular is extremely familiar with. We are in the process of putting Motorsport ABS into the vehicle, and being able to leverage that, we need decent calipers and brakes. So we've got 365mm Maserati brakes on the front, 330mm on the back, which major upgrades over a factory car. But it's important, it's needed. So, yeah.
And, this thing's obviously going to be pretty quick around the track. Can we expect to see it at World Time Attack or anything like that in the future?
Yeah, we're looking to, it won't be this year, obviously it's not ready, but we're looking to be able to campaign it next year, and definitely some events later in the year. Won't be Time Attack, but just to start dialing it in and start getting some data on the car. So looking forward to that.
Oh, that'll be good. And
definitely.
We can see as well, we've talked about the engine, we've talked a little bit about the interior and the dash setup that you've got there, but I'm noticing some pretty cool carbon panels there. You're doing all this carbon layup yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So a company, Apex Composites, we're actually working to produce really lightweight panels. So the idea with this car, again, people look at it and they say, oh, it's a Fiat 500, it must be really lightweight. Actually, they're all full of safety features from the factory, and actually it's quite tubby. And so being able to get the weight down, being able to shed, nearly sort of 400 kilos of weight between when we're finished with all the carbon conversion and, taking some of the other systems out of the car, it should make a big performance difference.
Yeah, and how much does something like this panel here weigh? Because I can feel it, there it's super light, but what's something like that come to on the scales?
Yeah, so to give you an idea, the factory panel is about 2.8 2.8 kilos, 2.7 kilos, and that's 430 grams. So it's a major saving of weight. That's not intended to be sort of cosmetic carbon. It is a functional weight reduction performance piece.
Yeah, because sometimes you see panels that you can buy online. They'll fit your car. They're lighter than stock, but not quite to this level here.
Yeah, they'll use things like fiberglass filler and sort of cheaper materials, and it looks carbon on the outside, but the reality is inside there's perhaps less sophisticated use of material, whereas these panels, they're actually a sandwich composite core, so as light as we can try and get it down, wherever we can to save a few grams.
Well, I cannot wait to see this thing finished. Between the weight reduction, the boost in power, the brakes, the tyres, it's not going to be recognisable, I think, as an Abarth 500 or a Fiat. It's going to be on a whole nother level. What else is in the pipeline for this vehicle here?
Yeah, so we're looking to. We've got a full aero package coming. So. There's a full splitter, diffuser, under tray, rear aero package, and that's in the works as part of the body conversion. So that'll be a good style. And then in terms of engine development, we've got some really big things in store in terms of pushing the power levels much higher. We've got a sequential change gearbox to go in. We'll be going rally style push-pull sequential shift, and again it's all been tied back through the MS6 ECU, so it's controlling all of the shifts, so really trying to cut as much performance advantages into it as we can.
All right, so here we are inside the surprisingly spacious interior of the Abarth 500. Eric, can you tell us a little bit about what we're looking here on the dash?
Yeah, sure. So what we've got is a representation of the engine system. So we're monitoring a lot of the temperatures. So thermal management's important with this setup. So we've got turbocharger. So we're looking at the inlet temperature to the turbo RPM, coming around to the boost inlet temperatures, the representation of the engine, and then the EGT coming out. So you've got your L slip and R slip on each side, and then your water and oil temp. And then importantly, we've got lambda and lambda target. And
that's a custom housing. I can see a few custom bits in this interior. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so they're actually 3D printed parts. So to be able to fit the DDU in and sort of that nice seamless sort of integration. And then similar coming across to the CAN keypad set, so another Bosch Motorsport keypad. And we've got a 3D printed housing so that we can sort of fill in the area where the radio used to be in the vents.
Yep, and this is just a work in progress at the moment.
That's right.
What's the plan for the keypad there?
The keypad allows us to change the boost maps, the fueling maps, and not so much the fueling, but like the modes. Mm-hmm. And also with the Bosch Motorsport ABS that's going in, we're able to change the attack level on the ABS as well, or from the keypad.
Yeah, very cool. And sport button underneath. Does that still happen to do anything?
Yeah, so we've sort of, we actually hacked into the CAN protocols of the car, and we now use that sport button to fire the rocket.
Very cool. That is one button I really want to press. Cool. And you were telling me before about this boost gauge on top, which to me looks standard. I have seen those in the Abarths before, but this one's a little bit special.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. That one's actually off a Group A Lancia Delta rally car. So the factory gauge, it sort of was only showing Fiat's marketing boost and not the real thing, and we needed something that could get up into a decent boost level, so that one goes up to 2.5 bar. So
very cool. Little period nod to all the crazy 80s and 90s technology.
Exactly. Those who know look at that and go, oh yeah, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, very cool.
So
yeah, it's fantastic. And I think what guys like us really enjoy about this kind of engineering, it takes us back to those glory days, Group B, 80s Formula One, where
Absolutely.
You just see so many technological solutions packed into a package to try and extract the most performance. It's not about being pretty, it's about being fast, and that functional effort really comes through with this.
Yeah, and you're dead right. the inspiration is Group B Rally and F1 of the 80s. Just the fact that they would go about making a solution to any problem that would come along and being a bit creative about it. And it's not about, you can tell looking at the car, we don't care so much if it's a certain brand name part or if it's, being meticulously machined from some complex material. It's all about what's the minimum we need to do to be able to get that to the right performance level. And if it earns its place and it can deliver some performance, that's why it's there. So in terms of, it's not there for show. We don't care if it's purple or black or whatever. It's there to earn its place.
Yeah, well, we love that kind of stuff at Bosch Motorsport. It's the ethos of our products, delivering a lot of performance, sometimes perhaps not being, super showy or whatever it may be. But it's fantastic to see a lot of the stuff integrated into this, and we can't wait to come back in a couple of months' time and see it, finished and on the track.
I very much look forward to having you back, and I think you'll notice some big changes.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having us today, Eric, and we'll visit you shortly to get the final word on it.
Thanks for coming up, Blake. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks.